welcome. I'm Alice, and my co host is.
I'm Donald from Hidden Path Human Design, and we're going to talk about the I Ching energies for April in this meeting.
This is the I Ching predictions for 2026 by author Eve Smith. We are on the first quarter collective energies, a check in. And if you're following in the book, it starts on page 86. It's primarily reflective questions. So you can look back through the chapters and see if anything has shifted or you've noticed something in your life. This first quarter would be January, February, and March. The first questions deal with your practice. In the introduction to the book, Eve talks about having practices that help support your personal growth and dealing with some of the thoughts and situations that may come up in your life as we're moving through these waves of collective energy every month. Practices would be things like yoga, meditation, journal writing, which is so important. What would you add, Donald?
I would definitely add Tai Chi, or what I've started to do when the energy's heavy is to dance a little bit to get it out of my system because I tend to pick up on energy from people.
That's great. I've heard over the years about just dancing around a few times.
Mhm.
It feels so good. Or just go outside and have a good scream if you feel like it. But
Yeah,
in this day and age, the neighbors might call somebody that's something going on.
for
Sometimes
sure.
it feels good to just be able to be someplace and get it off your chest so you can move on.
And also in this chapter of review, we were looking at what practices are you keeping and which ones are you getting rid of that no longer serve you.
I would say the practices that I'm trying to maintain. One is to read the chapter and
Mhm.
look at the questions and not just wait till the last minute and put it aside, to use it as a workbook. And the other thing is to try to be more consistent with my morning pages. I go through periods of every day, faithful, same time, coffee on the porch, that kind of thing. And then I go through periods where they disappear from my mind. I jump into the day and get going. I found that starting my daily journal, it's soothing. It helps me collect my thoughts and I can acknowledge myself for small things, small steps that I've taken. And that's one of the themes through the whole first quarter, small steps rather than big leaps and things like that. How about for you, Donald?
I've taken up a journal practice last month and it's been pretty good. I haven't been doing it daily, to be honest. My days are like up and down, up and down. There's a lot going on in my life. So I'm just trying to find what works and what doesn't and trying to do many different things.
Which is consistent. It seems like with the second half of the energy of March. Do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. So in March, a little bit of a review. We were going through small cattle, which is the hexagram 9. We were noticing tiny cracks form in relationships, or it could even be little repairs around the house. And we were warned to look before we leap. Watch before you take a step. I know March. I heard about so many people that took a bit of a tumble March. It was all about looking at the smaller things, the details. So if you were going to buy a house, make sure you have all the bases covered before you sign the mortgage.
I was taking a tumble. I can't believe
Mhm.
it was like, look before you walk. I took a big tumble. And not only was it a trauma for me, but I was staying with my daughter at the time, and she was there in the emergency room getting a CAT scan for head injury, all that kind of stuff. It has implications too when you're not careful, not only where you're walking, but where you're going and what you're choosing to spend your time on,
Mhm.
because it impacts not only yourself, but everybody around you. It can
Mhm.
be disruptive for folks. Was there anything else that you noticed?
Yeah, so personally, I found tiny cracks were forming in my relationships with family members. And even in between their relationships, I saw that happening too, where like the smallest thing would set somebody off. They wouldn't want to talk with each other in a productive way, we'll say. So there was a lot of that going on.
So I guess our theme for March was small cracks appear. beware. And I think at our last conversation that we had, we talked about in April, we're shifting into large cracks potentially appearing around us in the environment. At the end of March, you will know the energy of March is transitioning into April when the small frustrations become more intense and precarious. Here you will see things beginning to fall apart.
I can feel the underlying frustration already going into April from other people and also in my own life. So I don't know if you feel this too, Alice, in your environment. People are just getting to the point where they've had enough of certain things and they're not willing to put up with it anymore. One way I've been working with that energy is using it in a productive way of saying, well, if there's things that I'm not supposed to be putting up with anymore, to step away from those things. Or it's just telling me maybe this person is not for me or that activity is not for me. So rather than using the frustration and taking it out on anyone, I use it as a sign to not go that way.
Well, I have a crack. I was up in Atlanta for a week. It ended up being 2 weeks because I fell and was immobilized for a while. Somebody had to drive me home. I get home and I look out the window and there's an arc of water coming up out of the ground. The water system, one of the lines to the house, had just over the years come apart. It's like a crack in the foundation. Look around your house. That was one thing I had heard Eve talk about was check out the foundation of the house. Take this guidance and actually look at your physical environment and see if there are any problems. And if there are, the guidance is handle it. Don't put it off. So the same for relationships, business, or thing you're involved in. If you see something happening, don't put it off, handle it, deal with it. Would you agree with that?
For sure. So my mom actually had a problem with her sink in her bathroom where the one of the shutoffs was tight. And then she's, oh, I'll just put some grease or something on there to get it moving. And I said, you might actually want to think about replacing it because it's quite old too, because these tiny cracks in March are going to lead to fissures in April. That tiny leak could actually become a basement leak or something if unchecked or not fixed. And also something that the book mentions is your inner world. Where are the tiny cracks that you see in your inner world? Maybe you're getting mad at people too often and it's a time to self-reflect, like, where can I show up in a better way for others?
Tempers flare or people are more aggressive.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that too in grocery
Right.
stores and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And driving. We all know that in a lot of the metropolitan areas, the drivers are just crazy. Maybe because I was aware that this was going to be part of the energy, I just noticed it. And sometimes it's like, oh my God, you can't control other people. And they cut in so close. I had that experience on the interstate. I don't know how I didn't run into the person. When you're pulling over in front of somebody, you don't just cut over in front of their bumper because they're moving too. That was just an example of what you were talking about. It's the energy. It's not like there's something wrong with us, that we've gone off kilter. It's that we're now in a more turbulent energy. Like you said, it's up to us to be aware of our environment, to look around, to notice where you're going. I was trying to be not an old person and bend over and walk looking at my feet, but it would have been a good idea in the situation because my foot got caught on a piece of driftwood and over I went.
Slowed right down in March. I didn't do too much because I knew if I was going to rush, then I would probably miss things. So I just took the warning as an awareness. And I did almost fall one time, but I caught myself because I was just taking my time.
That's great. Well, the falls, I think, are not over because the energy that we're moving into in April, it's more intense. The chapter is called Great Excess on page 88. And it starts off with, we move into April carrying the lessons of small cattle. In March, the collective energy revealed the frustrations of small misalignments, like appliances breaking or your mother's handles on the faucet the water lines breaking in our house, arguments, projects wobbling. April's different. The shift to great excess is not, oh, wonderful, things falling from the heavens. No, it is heavier, more precarious. You and I had talked about small cracks becoming big cracks. That's what the energy is like. So March asks us to stay calm amid annoyances, small annoyances. April shows us the deeper structural flaws that cannot be ignored.
We gained an awareness in March of the tiny cracks, and now it's time to determine if those cracks can be repaired or if we have to step away and let it break. So we have a car repair pending right now for the front of the car. It's got cracks and it's got rust in the front. And if the job doesn't get done, the whole front end could fall out. This is a big potential for April. It's either we fix it and bite the bullet, or we just get a new car. The injury we're going to experience in April is, do you go in there and fix it? And is the cost worth it? Or do you step away and just go for something new? That's why I was suggesting to my mom, look at fixing the faucet, but maybe also look at what it would cost to replace, because it's old and you could have something new in its place. I like to look at the opportunities of things. It's going to be a month where, well, the foundation is really shot on this house. So what do? Rebuild the house or dig up the foundation and try to repair it? If you try to repair it, it may be irreparable. So then it's just going to break in April after you try to repair it.
I hope that was an analogy and not an actualization.
One of my friends, they have a house up north and the basement flooded because they're in between two water areas. She was helping her family with that, and because they had only done a tiny repair, then the repair didn't hold. It's not even an insurance claim because the repair wasn't fully done. So now they have to do the proper repair and spend the money, or maybe ditch the property. Because if you decide to save the property and it costs you too much and you go into debt and you have to sell anyways, you would have probably been better off just selling it as is. Big fissures. Yeah.
Big cracks that there are. That covers one of the things that Eve had written under the first part of Great Excess, which was check your building or your house for issues. It's just part of home ownership. It's not a personal vendetta of the world against you. It's just things wind down. If you have mechanical stuff, mechanical things break. Under lifestyle, where am I overextending myself? Because I think as momentum builds during the year, and it's just normal, things are accelerating towards the end of the year. It seems to pick up at work, and wherever you are, March can be extremely busy, and you're looking into April. There's just a lot of moving parts, I think, normally at this time of year. What do you think?
For sure. Did you want to go through the movements that we can expect in April?
That's a great idea. First one is the flawed situation. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. When we're looking at the foundation of something like a relationship, or it could be a physical object or a community, there might be something we see that can't be fixed. The idea here is to walk away from the situation or get out of the situation in some way. It's about taking the right actions instead of trying to fix what cannot be repaired. If it's raining outside, just a very simple example, then you can't change the weather. What you can do, though, is you can bring an umbrella or just not go out. It's up to you.
It's a little dicier, I think, with relationships because there's a lot to consider in terms of what's fixable, what's not, what can you do, what's the other person bringing to it that you have no control over. And you have to decide, does this whole relationship increase me? Does it build me up, or does it diminish me? And it could be that the relationship as a whole is uplifting, but there's an aspect of it that you feel diminished. And then you have to decide, is it your approach to it, your expectations that are not realistic, or is it out of your control in terms of the other person? And can that be negotiated or communicated? I've been married 55 years, so that's a long time. to deal with small breakdowns and changes, and people don't grow and develop in their life the same. They're not in lockstep. You can have one person developing at one rate and another person at another, and they're out of sync some of the time. And that can lead to an imbalance in the relationship or hurt feelings or all kinds of things. But at some point, if somebody decides to go right permanently and not willing to join together as a relationship, then that's when the hard conversations come into the matter.
I would definitely say you're correct there. People grow at different rates, and then sometimes you outgrow certain relationships or they outgrow you. The flawed situation there would maybe it's better to go separate ways. But sometimes there can be people that dwell on the past or want to start it up with you, cause fights in the household. Maybe it's also better to walk away from those situations because if you engage in them, then it's going to be bad for everybody. I've been learning to walk away from fight situations in my own life as well with people, which has been very healing and healthy.
I would say that's really a great skill to develop because at the end of the day, you come into this world by yourself and you leave by yourself, and you're responsible for what you do and yourself.
So if you can't take the right action, because if you say something that it's going to just turn into a kindling, we were learning about that in my Bible study about how the tongue could be the small spark that lights a whole forest on fire. And they're not just talking about the tongue, it could be even bodily actions. If you do something threatening, even if you help somebody, it could be a right action to help somebody, and then it shows everybody around. That's what they should be doing too. I was going to go to movement two.
Sure. Movement to the unexpected alliance. Even in times of instability, unlikely alliance can form and bring surprising benefits. So tell us about that.
You may randomly bump into some strangers or meet some new people that might become friends. They may feel like supportive friends and stuff like that, and they may bring a bit of stability to your situation. Now, it's funny because the very next line goes into like inadequate support. So, although they may bring some stability, we got to go back to the first one. It could be a flawed situation. Even with that person's help, you can't fix the foundations there. Don't try, just step away from that. So, 3 and 4, here's some support coming in, but also that support's not enough.
Movement 3 ends when the pillars are weak, step away. That was pretty direct guidance. What's difficult is a lot of times we're so enmeshed that we don't recognize the weakness. We're kind of lost in the brouhaha of all of it. I think the timing of stepping away is very important. Several times in my career where it was time to go or step away, and I talked myself into overstaying, and it never worked out well, was never a good outcome for anybody, including myself.
I wanted to speak on that too. You know how the energy ending March is a little bit of frustration building in you? So you can actually use that energy in a positive way to create healthy boundaries or prevent things from happening, like staying too long. When the frustration's really high, it's really hard to stay too long as well. So the energy is kind of supportive in a seemingly unexpected way because nobody wants to feel frustrated, but you can use that as a motivation to not stay in the situations that are maybe no longer very good.
Movement number 4, the illusion of good enough. Even after recognizing instability, it's tempting to convince yourself otherwise. Maybe it's fine. Maybe I'm overreacting. Have you had that experience?
I've been really practicing my intuitive skills lately, and I'm learning to trust them more and more. March was a good training ground for that. With all the kind of relationship breakdowns and stuff, I would just know if I say something, then it's going to make it worse. So then I was learning to walk away and just really trusting my intuition and not falling into the illusion or delusion sometimes of, oh, maybe it's okay if I just talk to this person again or mention how I felt, because then it would turn into a big argument. Sometimes good enough isn't good enough. It's just an illusion. Don't let your mind tell you a story that brings you back into the illusion that things are fine, because they may not be.
Trust your inner voice or your feelings. Sometimes I find around heart space it's tightening, or I get headaches or whatever. I need to look at what is going on. Am I trying to convince myself to do something and continue doing something that's not right for me? the situation is just not right.
You got to trust that the situation's not right because your heart's closing up. And then instead, your mind tells you, well, we're family, or, well, we've been friends for 15 years, or, well, I fixed that last week, so it should be fine. That's the illusion or the delusion that you can get trapped in with that fourth
Right.
movement.
And I also think it's important that you don't blame other people because at the end of the day, it's your life and you're responsible. I can't resist listening to some of the people on YouTube shorts, and
Mhm.
people are talking about all kinds of their behavior. I have to say, astonished that they would share some of this. It's not everybody else's fault. It's a situation you happen to be in, and you need to figure out how to deal with it and then learn what kind of skills are you developing. It'll come around again, maybe in another way. And then the second time, maybe you don't quite see it for what it is. But the third time it comes around, that's how I find in my life. Okay, I've been here, I've done X, I've done Y, and I know now it's time to do Z.
Mhm.
X and Y, I was just fooling myself, kind of thing. It did not work.
Yeah, I like to ask myself, what role am I playing in perpetuating whatever's happening, especially when things keep happening over and over again? It's like if you touch a hot burner and you get burned and you're, oh, I didn't know it was hot or on. But then maybe you touch it again. For the third time, you start to check to see if the light tells you it's hot or if the actual stove
Right.
is on. And you're not kicking the stove and putting a dent in it because you got burned. That may have happened the first time you burned yourself. Blame the
Right.
stove. It's not the stove.
Okay, number 5, movement.
Mhm.
Because remember, we're building the hexagram here, and there's 6 lines to a hexagram. We've talked about the first 4. The illusion of zenith, meaning we're at the top here.
Yeah.
Now it says, as
April,
April
yeah.
continues, things may appear luminous and aligned. A sudden sense of luck or revival. Oh, maybe I was mistaken, or maybe I overreacted, or whatever. The energy feels like a peak moment, a second chance at something long desired. This is an illusion. So, what looks within reach may no longer be sustainable. Can you think of an example of that?
For sure. When I was reading this line, what came to me is when you get on a roller coaster, where March is like you can hear the clicks of the roller coaster going up to the peak. And then you get to the peak and you're like, oh, maybe I won't be that afraid. It's just before you're about to go down.
Right,
Yeah.
plunging down in terror.
Yeah, plunging down in terror, and your bottom lifts off the seat, and you should have been holding on.
That's a great example.
It's the calm before the storm almost. That takes us to the warning for the month of April, which is becoming overextended. If you're at the top of that roller coaster and you don't see what's going to come because you didn't look, then you may get the surprise of your life and get overextended. Checking your feelings. If you feel capable, it doesn't necessarily mean you are. And pause, take stock of the situation, and then protect your reserves. That was the big energy for the 6th line.
The 6th line is usually a warning. Beware overextension. And this has been a pattern in my life for a long time, overextending. I get enthusiastic about projects and I overcommit both in time and energy. This is a long-term project. I'm committed for the next few months, but I have all these other things happening. How am I going to manage all of this? How am I going to pull it all together? How am I not going to disappoint other people, or how I'm going to not harm myself, my family?
I wanted to add to that overextension. In human design, with this is gate 28. The 6th line in human design says blaze of glory. The warning here could be don't go out in a blaze of glory, trying to fix the foundation of something.
Because you go up in flames.
I hope we don't see anybody going up in a blaze of glory in April, but it may happen. Just be aware that you don't have to follow them into the fire.
That's a good point because we've been talking about this as personal predictions, but what Eve is sharing in the chapters are the collective energy currents. Not only can we maybe see this in our life, but around us, we can notice this and not get caught up in movements or other people's issues or things like that. Like you said, step back.
Let's say your friends all want to go to a protest, just for example. then you got to find out what are the foundations, take stock of what they're protesting, and will the protest actually change anything? Or is there a better way of doing it? And decide for yourself if it's a good idea for you to go. So if it's a good idea, go. But if it's got a bad foundation, don't go because something's likely going to happen. You're going to get caught up in it and get overextended or go out in a blaze of glory.
There were a couple of reflection
Mhm.
questions for this last warning. I thought were interesting. Is my plate too full? Because when you're overextended, you get tired. You can't make good decisions from a place of exhaustion and overwhelm. You think you're doing the right thing, but you're not stepping back. You're not doing it from a place of quietude where you can actually look on the one hand, on the other hand, and you can harm yourself and others. The other one is, do I truly have the energy and support for this? Not only energy, but also financial support. There are implications for everything that you do. Maybe it sounds like a great idea to go on a cruise. Oh, all our friends, let's go, let's do it. But when you've maxed out your credit card and
Mhm.
you are in trouble trying to make the payments, it was not a wise choice. You didn't have the support to handle that.
It could even be like if you're leaving a relationship, do you have the emotional support to leave it? Because if you don't, it might not be a very good idea to leave it right away. Maybe just give yourself some time or see who comes in. Maybe that unexpected helper will give you a little bit of emotional support to help you out. So look for the unexpected things in April. That might be a sidestepping way out, a pivot moment.
And finally, am I acting from inspiration or obligation? If you're acting from inspiration, would you say that's somewhat connected to inner knowing or intuitive?
Yeah, like following your inspired joy. If you're doing stuff from a place of obligation, it feels heavy. Anyone can test this out themselves. Does it feel heavy or does it feel light? If it feels light, fun, and all that, then it's probably out of inspiration. But if it feels heavy, obligation, let's say your boss is asking you to work that extra day on the weekend and it feels heavy, you need some time off. If you do those extra days, you're going to overextend yourself. But your body's already telling you it feels heavy. I always encourage people to say no to things because when you say no to things, it pushes away the things that aren't good for you and also that are good for you, but the things that are good for you will always come back to you. All it does is it clears the board for what's really for you. And then you only have those limited things that keep coming back that are actually for you. That's a human design thing.
I know when I was younger, it was hard to say no to things. But I notice as I've gotten older, maybe that's the wisdom of surviving to a certain age.
Mhm.
But it's easier to say, no, I can't. That's not for me. And
Mhm.
not to be guilty about it, not to make a lot of excuses or try to explain or convince somebody why you're saying no. It's just, it's not for now. It
Mhm.
doesn't work. And it's a relief. And
And
I don't dwell anymore on it. Did I do the right thing? Like you said, you've cleared your plate and it's okay.
so in my own life, what was happening in March, where I was using this strategy, was a lot of people were telling me, when am I going to get a job, a real job? When are you going to give up on your business that hasn't really done much? But I just have faith that the timing and that things will work out. And if I go and get a job and I'm also dealing with a separation and all this stuff, I could potentially overextend myself next month. I'm just trying to keep my plate clear because it's going to give me the capacity for something to come in. I'm hoping in April, maybe something happens unexpectedly. So I got a little bit excited with that. I think it was the second line, the unexpected allies.
For the closing
Mhm.
thoughts for April, great excess teaches us to pay attention to flaws, cracks, and inherent instability. It asks us to withdraw before collapse, to trust intuition, you've talked about that, and to recognize that what appears within reach may no longer be ours to claim. And that's a hard one, I think, because we think,
Mhm.
oh, we've gone out, we've worked so hard for this. Now you got to step back. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's a big relief to step back.
And there's an overarching theme in April of letting go sometimes. If you feel like something's going to overextend you, then just let go of it. If it
Right.
comes back, it might be for you, but if it doesn't, then it was probably something good to let go of.
And there's no shortage of opportunities. Opportunities are always showing up. So if you don't take this one, maybe two or three of interest will show up down the road. That was one thing I learned a long time ago is you don't have to pounce on every opportunity because if it's not right, if the timing's off, if you're tired, if you're going to be overextended, then another opportunity will come along. Ceaseless opportunities arise.
You can think of it like you have a basket and the basket can hold a certain amount of apples, and maybe you leave your basket half full to invite different apples to come in. But if your basket's full, guess what? If somebody drops an apple on it, it's going to fall off the top. So you always got to play with your own capacity for things.
There is one final reflection question that we want to leave everybody with for leaving April. What is one area of your life where you need to stop pushing and instead step back, release, or restructure? So that's a big question to dwell on as you're in April. Where's the one area, not a whole bunch of them, just choose one. And for most people, it'll pop up. They'll know right away. Oh, yeah, I need to stop pushing on this. I need to release it, let it go, or I need to restructure the whole thing, my whole approach to it. That is the message we're leaving for April. Then you'll know when the energy is shifting towards May prevailing, when tension of instability begins to give way to a sense of expansion. So more openness in relationships, greater willingness to collaborate, momentum building around projects. You feel aligned, projects feel aligned, things like that.
And I also want to invite anyone who's watched this video to comment below what is the one area in your life that you need to stop pushing and instead step back, release, or restructure. Also like and subscribe to the channel.
We'd love to hear from you as always. And it's still plenty of time to get the book. There'll be a link in the description below if you would like to order it from Amazon. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, we've got everything covered.
So it's going to be an interesting month, and I'm glad we had this conversation because it was helpful to think about these things, about overextension and unexpected support, to be more aware of what's going on, to be able to maneuver through the currents as opposed to feeling like you're getting overwhelmed by everything in life. What would you like to add before we go?
When you said about the currents or flowing with the currents, it reminded me of surfing. I think Eve's talked about this in her book before, about learning to surf and finding your balance. In a way, we're all becoming surfers of life.
That's right. In case you don't know, Eve has a Substack channel and Donald has a Substack channel. I'm going to leave links below to both channels because it's interesting to stay in the conversation. And it may not just be I Ching conversation, but it may be other things that Donald shares from human design perspective and things that Eve shares from her development of her intuitives and channeling and things that she offers her subscribers. So if you've not subscribed, please subscribe. And we will see you again for May. Feel free to listen again to our conversation and also to the conversations that Eve has posted about the fire horse energy, as well as she's doing a mini conversation for each of the months. If you need to reflect and think again about what we've been talking about, those are available to you on this channel.
Awesome. And don't go out in a blaze of glory in April.
Thanks very much for coming. And thank you, Donald, for supporting this conversation. And we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thanks, Alice. Have a great day.